Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's edition of, Platform Explorer Spotlight Session. Today we have a really special guest, and we're really excited, to introduce him, to get to discuss with him about, thought-provoking subjects around career development, and just get to understand his background, his career, and then, get an understanding of the sort of skills that we look out for, especially when it comes to his industry, to his area, right? So just before we get into things, just a bit of introductions. We'll start with, for those of us who are joining us for the first time, Platform Explorers. If you haven't heard of Platform Explorers before, Platform Explorers is a community where we get to work with, early career professionals, people who are looking to transition into technology and, are looking to get that hands-on experience, right? The hands-on skills to understand, okay, how do I gain confidence when targeting or when going into the career space, when addressing interviews and all of that, right? So here at Platform Explorers, through cohorts, right? So we deliver cohorts where we get to train individuals to build their portfolio, gain confidence in addressing interviews and all of that, right? So, and we do this in collaboration with industry experts like Quincy, who we have as our guest today, right? And, just getting people to understand what really matters when you get into, the workspace. So by way of introduction, my name is Juan Idowu. I am one of the co-founders of Platform Explorers. Really, really thrilled to be here. And I would usually focus on the areas of security, compliance, and identity. And then, Rachel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Rachel Rabo. I'm also a co-founder of Platform Explorers. I'm focused on Power Platform and Azure, so it's nice. And yeah, so thank you so much. And our special guest, Quincy. Hi.
Hey everybody, my son's practicing piano. He just likes to play piano in the background. I hope it's not too loud and you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you clearly.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Juan, for inviting me on. And I'm excited to answer your questions. And I think it's super cool that you're out helping people, giving them actionable advice so that they can make decisions about their careers and so they can prepare to enter the field.
Yeah. Thank you very
Awesome,
much.
awesome. Yeah, thanks, Quincy. And by the way, your son's piano, it acts as like a background sound. So that's actually really cool. So
Okay,
yeah,
Yeah, that
cool.
was good too. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Quincy, it's great to meet you. It's great to have you, on our spotlight session today. Can we just get to know a bit more about, your current role? What do you do at the Free Code Camp? What's your area of expertise? Like just a bit more about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I am a teacher by trade. I worked as an English teacher in the U.S. and in China, and I taught lots of adult learners. So that is my background. And then I just wanted to make my school more efficient and save a lot of my administrators a lot of back office work. So I learned some basic programming kind of as a hobby, and then I was able to do that and gradually learn programming. And then I was able to get my first software engineering role. And then a few years later, I created freeCodeCamp. So that's like a very quick background of how I got to where I am. But it's important to note that like I'm primarily a teacher, and that is my main background. And I still consider myself primarily a teacher. I do some software engineering, but yeah, like I'm not the best software engineer. I'm not like an S tier software engineer. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that I've been running this charity for the past 11 years. So I haven't been on the job market myself. So if there's like a perceived lack of empathy, if you're like, well, you don't know how hard it is to get a job right now. I don't. I can't directly say that, but I do talk to many people. Like on the freeCodeCamp podcast each week, I just went to a big conference here in Dallas, Texas, where I live, and talked with lots of developers who are on the job market and who have recently gotten jobs. And I understand that right now is not the easiest time in developer history to be getting a job. So I just wanted to make sure that I gave you all sufficient background. So uh, I can't remember exactly what your question was. Well, I'm sorry,
No,
but
yeah, sure, it's fine. Yeah, the next question
Yeah.
is, yeah, okay. So the question
Okay.
was
Yeah.
just
Thanks,
asking about
Rachel. So
you.
go
Hi,
ahead.
okay, so the first question was just asking about you introducing yourself. And the next question I have to ask now is that you described your main background as a teacher, as an English teacher. So, like, how did you create Free Code Camp? And did you ever think that it would have this much impact it has today? Like, did you ever imagine it?
well, I think everybody who creates like an open source project hopes that people use that project and
Yeah,
hope that people will like run your code. That's the dream of every developer, to have their code actually be used, right? And I had no idea that this many people would be interested in learning. But it makes sense if you think about it, like looking back, because it's free, open source learning resources that are self-paced, that basically anybody can do at their convenience. We have like mobile apps. We have daily coding challenges if you just got a few minutes and you need to jump in and get some practice. We've
yeah,
got podcasts you can listen to. We've got courses on like theory on YouTube. If you need to like learn some mathematics, if you need to learn some kind of CS fundamentals, we've got courses on all those things. So it makes sense that it would have like broad appeal. Um, but at the time, like I was just trying to create like something that I actually had a much more sophisticated like app that I was working on that would try to teach people everything. It was basically like a recommendation engine for books. If you're like which textbooks should you use, which free online
okay,
Stanford courses and things like that should you use, and it would figure out where you were from your LinkedIn profile. It would like take that in, and then I'd scrape like I think 30,000 job postings from different job sites, and then I'd like kind of like figured out what I like different job roles were looking for. And so you could say what you wanted to do, and then it would basically like give you a series of books, taking into account like the kind of like prerequisites for each course and everything like that, the series of books and courses to help you work toward that. But nobody was interested in that. What people were interested in ultimately was I stripped everything down to just teach JavaScript. And it turns out JavaScript itself is just very useful. It's probably the most widely used programming language in history, unless you count like the C code running underneath the JavaScript and stuff like that. So, yeah, like I just decided to teach JavaScript, and that was really like the beginning. It was just like an online cohort, kind of where like everybody was in a chat room and they were talking as they were going through these different readings and these different
mhm,
online courses. And then we created our own courses. After a few months, we started creating our own coursework, and then that grew into our curriculum, which has thousands of hours of interactive coding challenges and projects and things like that. So that was the evolution of it. But I had no idea where I was going when I started. It's not like I had some grand vision. And I think anybody who says they have a grand vision
yeah,
is probably exaggerating, because I think so much of it is just reacting and learning. And there's
yeah,
like a tight feedback loop when you're getting feedback, like, oh, we should go in this direction. Oh, people don't care about that, so we shouldn't waste our time
yeah,
building that, stuff like that.
yeah. That's really really nice. Yeah,
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And then, you made mention of people trying to have resources available to
yeah,
individuals and all of that, right, to aid them learning. Now, I joined, I attended an online session the other day, and, a lady was like, I enjoy learning, right? So to speak, I enjoy learning about new things and all of that. And then, technology is fast evolving, right?
yes,
People are trying to you find new ways to get job done, incorporate AI in so many things and all of that. But then the problem with that now is sometimes you have there's just a vast number of resources and you're like, where do I focus on? So how do you address, the questions of maybe you have people coming into your sessions or the free code camp, and then they're like, how do I get started? How do you find a way to, advise
yeah,
people on choosing a right path and then staying consistent and just canceling all of those noise?
Yeah,
yeah.
well,
Very good
that's a
question.
nice question. So if I
Yeah,
understand correctly, there's really two questions: like finding the path and then staying on the path. So I
Yes.
wrote a book a couple years ago, which is free. It's a free book. Just Google "Learn to Code" book, and I believe it'll be the top result after all the ads. But it takes about 4 hours to read it. It's not a very long book. And you can actually listen to the audiobook version. I recorded it, although you will hear some piano in the background because my son is constantly playing piano, and I couldn't always record. It took like a week to record it. It's really hard recording an audiobook. But it's episode 100 of the Free Code Camp podcast is the audiobook version of this book. It's like 4 hours long. But it will walk you through kind of like triaging and figuring out your interests and everything like that. But at the end of the day, like I recommend everybody start with just like front end web development and then work farther back down the stack. The reason for that is most people, not everybody, but most people learn better when they can kind of see and visualize what's going on. And when you're working with like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you're kind of closer to the user interface and you can appreciate that more. If you were to start at like C and you're just moving, pointers around and like managing memory and stuff like that, like that might be fun for some people, but a lot of people will have difficulty with that level of abstraction. And so I recommend just starting with front end development and then working backward. As for getting a job, it has lots of tactics for getting a job, but I think one piece of advice that seems to be very common among the guests I've had on nearly 200 episodes of the Free Code Camp podcast is that just do what your boss tells you. Like if your boss wants somebody that is working on something, be like, hey, I can learn how to do that. And because there's a clear stated need. Like if you need to learn Shopify's APIs, right? Or if you need to learn like how to incorporate Anthropic's LLM APIs and create like an MCP and stuff like that. Like those are things that your boss is asking you to do. You can get paid to learn by just volunteering to do those. So that's once you have a job. Of course, how do you get the job? That is a lengthier process. I do get into that in the book. And maybe some of your subsequent questions will get into that. But I will say in terms of staying on the path, the path, in my humble opinion, not so humble opinion, is frankly just go to the top of Free Code Camp and start working through that curriculum. That is the most over-engineered curriculum in history. It's probably for any topic because it's got like 60,000 pull requests to the repo, right? Like people have really put a lot of thought into how to sequence, how to explain different concepts, created projects where you can apply it. And if you just work through that, you will learn the engineering skills. It's just a question of whether you stick with it. But sticking with it is just, in my humble opinion, building it into your routine. Like you go to work at 8:00, try to wake up half an hour early and just do like 30 minutes of coding every single day. And like, I wouldn't even take the weekend off. I would just like try to get into a groove where you're doing like 30 minutes to an hour of programming a day. And and also budget a couple years to get good at it. I talk to a lot of people who are like, I can't stand working in retail. I'm going to become a programmer. And I'm like, great, keep working in retail and learn programming. And just understand that it takes probably, a year or so before you're even ready to start applying for jobs. And once you start applying for jobs, then that takes maybe another 6 months, depending on how you're going about the process. So that's a whole lot of stuff, but I hope I've answered the question of how to find the path and how to stay on the path.
You certainly did. You certainly did. And one thing that I love about your response is the fact that you're realistic about the timeline. Some people feel like, they start their journey in technology and they feel like, okay, yeah, in the next 2 months or 3 months, I should be able to land the job. I should know all of these skills. Yeah, right. I see that a lot. And then I have to explain to people like, it could take a year, just like you said, right? A year to even get some of the basic skills and be able to confidently speak about them. And then once you start actively in that, job application process, it could take up to 6 months, right? Because truly the job market, like Rachel would usually say, it's tough out there.
Yes.
You're applying alongside so many other people. So yeah, thanks for that, Quincy. Rachel, I think you had a question.
Yes, I do. And also the way you mentioned about consistency, like if you want to start a career, if you want to learn any tool or you want to learn any platform, you need to be consistent giving away 30 minutes a day, 1 hour a day to learn it. So it's awesome. So the question I have is that, like, right now the world is changing. The way people got jobs 5 years ago, it's quite different from now. Everything is so difficult right now, and there are a lot of opportunities out there that it's so hard to get them, especially for beginners who are just starting out their careers, or for individuals who are moving from one career into tech. Okay, so the question I have is that we have CVs. Most people call it resume that people submit to apply for a job. So my question is that how can people? A lot of people talk about the importance of portfolios, having portfolios, especially for this particular people now, beginners just starting out and individuals transitioning into tech. So what advice do you have for them concerning their portfolio and their CV?
Yeah. Well, the advice that Leon Noel and Danny Thompson, who are two essentially experts,
Yeah.
who are a big part of the freeCodeCamp community. There's a significant overlap between Leon Noel's 100 devs community and the freeCodeCamp community. A lot of people do both. Um, he gives the advice of like really taking time to be surgical in your job applications, and try to customize your resume and your if there's an cover letter, which there
Yeah.
could be. If you're only doing, I just interviewed somebody earlier this week that only applied for like 20 roles, but they got interviews and converted those into their first developer job, and they're a self-taught developer, college dropout, and they were able to do that. But the way they did that was they were just extremely meticulous about like figuring out whom they were going to talk to at these companies and how they were going to go about applying. And I think that's like probably like an outlier, 20 applications. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you might have people that apply for thousands, like literal
Yes.
thousands of jobs, right?
True.
And
Yeah.
sometimes those people are just suffering from bad luck. Sometimes they may be discriminated against for one reason or another. A common
Yeah.
reason here in the States is like if you don't have a 4-year computer science degree, that could be a big strike against you. Or if you have like a long break in your work history, there are so many things that like these AI systems will like essentially filter you out for. And I'm not going to pretend to have a deep understanding of those things, but I will say that spending time to do research and know where you're applying. Leon Noel is a big fan of saying, don't be a clicker. Don't click apply. Try to get your resume to somebody, whether that's at like some sort of in-person kind of like event, or whether that is at least, emailing or DMing with them on LinkedIn or something like that. That generally has a much higher success rate. But in terms of building your portfolio, which is an excellent question, I think
Yeah.
your portfolio, the advice I've heard is have one big project that you spend a lot of time on, ideally that people have used. If it's open source on GitHub, maybe if you have a few other people contributing to it, it's not just you. That you start something and you actually get people to contribute to it, like have a Discord for it and stuff like that. Or just figure out a way to have one impressive thing that incorporates a lot of the different tools that you've used. So maybe
Yeah.
it could have a Java Spring backend, but it's got like React running in the front end, and then maybe it's hosted on AWS, so you can showcase the fact that the AWS ecosystem, for
Oh,
example, or
that's a
maybe it
nice idea.
incorporates some
Yeah.
Lambda serverless functions, right? Like so like
Yeah.
if that project, if you can find a project that is something people actually use, maybe it's like a dieting app, or maybe it's like some sort of tool to help kids like schedule play dates among parents, or
Yes.
whatever is relevant to you, that is something you would yourself use. Maybe you're trying to like find a way that you can get your friends together to play Dungeons and Dragons more regularly, and instead of just having one day a week, you want to have something more granular that's going to help people figure that out, right? So come up with a good project idea that's big, and where you can add authentication, and where you can add a lot of these other concepts. Hang on one second, my kids are crying. I think they got into a fight.
Yeah, and it's a very, very good idea. I've never thought about it like having a project where you get to showcase your idea of different tools. It's so, so
Yeah,
good.
like
Yeah.
especially I'm picking the part you mentioned, collaborating also with other people, right?
Yes.
Because the truth is, no one expects you to be like you're not an island of knowledge, right?
Yes.
So maybe I know about authentication. I know you are good with like developing, working with power platforms and all of that.
Yeah.
We come together, someone with idea of Azure or
Yes.
AWS and all of that, and then make it into that one project that just makes sense and
Yes.
continue developing on that. It's actually quite an interesting idea if you think about
Yeah.
it.
And it's kind of a way where you get to show the recruiter or the hiring manager that, hey, even though I don't have an experience, I've never worked before in this role. I know how to
Mhm.
work with people. I can build a solution
Exactly.
and work with a team. You can easily show that, hey,
Exactly.
I built this solution with these people. This shows that indirectly, this shows that, hey, I can work with a team. I can explain what I am doing or what I have done. So it's such a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
good idea.
It
Yeah.
is, to be honest. And then back to Quincy's point of, even if it's spending 20 minutes a day just to
Yeah.
like improve on something in that project, it goes a very
Yes.
long way.
Yeah, it
So yeah,
does. Yeah, not just building on the project and then getting to a certain point, drop it, and then jump to
yeah,
another project.
do something
Yeah.
else. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, Quincy. Hope peace is now like restored.
Yes, yeah. I talked to my kids. It was they were fighting over something, and I got them to chill out.
Cool.
Totally understand. I can relate. So yeah, Rachel and I were just, reviewing your response to, the last question, and it really does make a lot of sense, right? So working on your portfolio, looking for ways to collaborate with people and just showcase that you do have the skills, so when you then work into an interview and all of that, you're able to like defend that conversation, so to speak. So now, going beyond coding and the technical skills and all of that, right? Based on your experience, and because you made mention of, okay, sometimes one has to step out of their comfort zone, maybe reach out to someone on LinkedIn, like, this is my CV, please review. Or if you're at an in-person event, mustering the confidence to like ask questions to sort of find ideas to better position yourself for a role. Now, this would sort of fit into like soft skills, so to speak. So going beyond the technical skills. So like based on your experience working with developers, speaking with them, advising and running your podcast as well, what sort of soft skills have you seen that you would say, definitely this can help one be successful in technology, whether that you're new or you're transitioning into a new area?
Yeah, well, listening is a good one. Being able to listen and try to interpret what people actually are trying to communicate to you. And a lot of that they may not say straight up, "Oh, we're hiring, we're looking," but they may be like, see if you can identify that, like being able to parse what they're giving you, right? Um, and being able to remember stuff is another thing. Like I take a lot of notes when I'm doing, like, even when I'm interviewing people on a podcast, I like to have my textual notes that I can go through when I'm like trying to figure out how to summarize the call, for example, and things like that. And a lot of people may rely on AI for that, and I think that is okay, I guess, but you're missing out on an opportunity to improve your active listening skills. The other thing that I would say is just the courage, like the courage to walk up to somebody. That's not an easy thing. That's not natural, right? Especially if it's somebody who speaks a language that you don't natively speak, right? And you have to like foreign language skills is something I had to work with a lot working in China, for example. So, and it was daunting. It was very daunting to do that. And it's still daunting to this day. But another thing I would say is getting your English skill, if that's an issue for you, like if you're non-native English speaker, getting that to perfect. There is no limit to how good your English. I even talk to people from like, for example, like India, who have technically spoken English throughout their school, but they don't necessarily have the vocabulary that like a native English speaker from the States would have, or from Nigeria, or from a lot of other English speaking countries, right? Like they wouldn't necessarily have the full proficiency. So what I tell them is, I actively learn new vocabulary all the time. I'm looking new words up every time I encounter. I'm reading the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or something like that, and I see a word I don't know. You better believe I look that up and write it down. And that is one thing. Like if you don't fully understand, or if you can't talk like those people, and you might say, "Oh, that's just some random technology buzzword." Don't dismiss buzzwords. Like, learn them, because that's how people communicate. It's kind of like a shortcut, right? When somebody is talking about some term, often they're communicating quite a bit just by the fact that they're using that terminology. Oh, that's like an engineering term. Maybe they're an engineer, right? Like you can pick up on a lot of those things if you're good at actively listening. But going back to courage, just doing it a lot. Extroversion is a muscle, in the sense that, like, I think left to our own, we'd all love to just kind of, not all of us, but a lot of us would like to just hang out and maybe just talk to people that we already know and not have to go meet new people, because it can be really challenging. And when you go to like a career fair type event, or you go to a big conference and there are like vendors there and there are speakers, like, try to go talk to the speakers after they give their talk, and build those relationships. Don't be shy about getting people to connect on LinkedIn with you. Don't be shy about sending people an email, like reminding them, like, hey, I had a great time talking with you. If you ever want to like collaborate on a project, let me know. Like to some extent you might think, oh, I'm not that forward. I'm not that kind of person. But if you want to succeed, to an extent, you do have to become that person, or you have to draw that type of person out from yourself.
That's absolutely brilliant. And
Yeah.
it's like, really, it's, even if you're not that person, you have to find the courage to like become that person. And it actually reminds me of an instance where I started a new job role, and then literally a month into the role, there was an opportunity to sort of lead a roundtable conversation at a summit, for that role. So now I go in, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't know anyone, but then let me just, muster the courage. This is an opportunity to meet new people. And then, I'm at my table and I have like all of these individuals there. We get talking and all of that. And then turns out that, most of the individuals on that table were like actually part of top management. And then
Wow.
when I, like, 6 months into the role, because here I'm based in Ireland, and then when you start a new job, you would usually have like a 6 months probation period. I think it's a bit different in the US, right? So at the end of my 6 months probation, I was having the review with my manager, and he's like, oh yeah, remember that roundtable conversation you had back then? Most of the managers actually sent me feedback on, you actually spearheading that conversation. And I'm like, wait, really? They did? So sometimes you just need to muster the courage to do something outside of the ordinary, something you would usually not do, or you would be scared to
Yeah.
do, just to
Yes.
like put yourself out there, and then just um, build yourself, build your reputation and all of that. So yeah, thanks for that, Quincy. Over to you, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so right now we have a lot of statements where people say that AI is going to take my job, or in the next 3 to 4 years, this job would no longer exist anymore. So for those who are just starting out, or for individuals already in their careers, in this AI world we have now, everything is moving so fast. Like, you get this today, something else is coming out tomorrow. So everything is moving so fast. And so the question I have is that how can individuals future proof their skills? Like, how can they keep up with what is happening? How can they make sure that their skills are relevant? Like, what they know is relevant?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there was a long period of time, I think like maybe a year or two, where you had lots of CEOs. Like, I think the prominent ones were like, I think Duolingo, Coinbase, Klarna, a lot of these companies coming out and saying, oh, we're going to try to like not have a lot of developers on our team anymore. We're going to try to use AI for a lot of that. And almost all of those companies, I think actually all of those, the three that I mentioned, are now hiring back people, because they realized the practical limits of just handing everything over to an AI system. Now,
Yeah.
you can give developers AI tools, and that does potentially improve their productivity, depending on the task. It's very task specific, but it's not necessarily going to make them 10x developers just because you gave them this tool. And I think a lot of managers underestimated the amount of work it takes to like learn these tools and actually get them to do what you want them to do. And we'll see what happens with that. But I will say that I think that tide is kind of turning, and people are less worried about AI taking their jobs than they were, or they should be less worried, because managers are not talking about it openly anymore because they realized, oh, that was kind of dumb. Like, we actually don't know how fast these tools are going to progress and stuff like that. Now, we use AI tools. We've got like a handbook that we published a couple of weeks ago that Murgesh Mohapatra on our team wrote that is basically a guide to AI assisted coding. And so we had like a big hackathon, and everybody used like Claude Code, and we were using, I think, GitHub Copilot and a few other tools. And the idea was, you're not supposed to write the code yourself. You're supposed to use a prompt requirements document or something like that, and essentially have the code gen do it for you. So this is like essentially having agents work on it. So I'm familiar with the workflows, and I've done a little bit of it myself. But I guess I remain relatively unconvinced that this is really the future, because like developers don't want to sit around and code review all day. And I think a lot of people, like, for certain tasks it's great, but it's not great for everything. And I think that's the fundamental thing. So in terms of like future proofing your skills and not worrying about AI, like, you should learn how to use it, but learning how to use AI tools is not the same undertaking as learning to code JavaScript, or learning how relational databases work, or learning how to structure SQL queries. Like, those are hard skills that take a tremendous amount of time, energy, practice, theory. You can learn how to use AI tools in like a couple weekends. It's not rocket science, right? And I think people are greatly overstating, like, oh, I want to be like a software engineer that works with AI. Like, I want, I want to learn AI. Like, that's something I hear people say all the time. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, read Murgesh's book and you'll pretty much know what you need to know. It's not that, but what Murgesh's conclusion is in the book, and what almost every other software engineer I've talked to is, if you're not already a software engineer who understands like all those different layers of abstraction, who understands programming and understands how sophisticated like legacy code bases like fit together, and understands, like API calls and servers and all these other concepts, you're going to not really be able to get a lot out of these tools. And yes, there are tools where you can basically say, create this UI and do this and that. You can come up with like a simple app, but you're not going to be able to develop sophisticated ones, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, and there's something you pointed out. You pointed out that there are a lot of persons that, I think there was a time that this thing was very popular. Companies were not allowing their junior developers use AI tools because they wanted them to actually learn the coding language or the technology that they are using. So it's, even though you are thinking about, okay, my career, AI is coming, AI is taking jobs and stuff like that, you also need to learn the technology or the paths that you are following. You need to learn everything you need to know, and then add AI as an addition to it.
Yeah, very true, very true. I agree with what you've both even shared on this, because it's just the honest truth. You can't compare someone who has had, like, 10 years, 5 years work experience, before AI was incorporated with the technologies, with someone who just, starts out. And then, for example, for my field, we would have what we call, security co-pilot, right? So now with security co-pilot, because I would usually work with the Microsoft, security solutions, now you're able to use it to triage incidents. You're able to use it to, like, optimize policies and all of that. But then if you're not able to understand what's even the basics of that policy, then even if the Copilot tool or the AI tool is giving you all of those, breakdown and then optimization options, you wouldn't really be able to make the best use of that if you don't have the foundational, like a strong foundational knowledge. So thanks for sharing that. And actually, that then brings me to the next question, which is really around, and I think, earlier you had mentioned that in the US, for example, there might be like, sometimes there can be certain, like if AI is being utilized to review resumes and all of that, right? There can be chances of where there's like certain biases if the user does not, or if the individual does not have maybe a 4-year degree in computer science and all of that, right? So in such a scenario, have you seen though, like people from non-traditional, computer science or technology backgrounds being able to stand out in this, tech industry? And then like what did you see them do? Like what do you think they did differently to be able to break that, barrier, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I've met like so many people who have, like I call them layers of difficulty, right? So
Mm,
if let's say you're an American-born white male who has a college degree, right? Like me, like that is like there's a lot less difficulty there in terms of getting a job because there's a very high chance that the person who's interviewing for the job is also going to have a lot of those attributes, right? Because that just constitutes much of the U.S. workforce, right? But then you can add other layers. One of them is being a self-taught developer who didn't finish university or only has like an associate's degree because they were interested in nursing and then they tried nursing and they didn't like it. And now they're trying to transition into another field, right? You can have people who, it's very common in the US, who have like a criminal record because the US, like you can get into trouble for doing practically anything here. And it's like very punishing legal system here in the States. So I talked to a lot of people who, for example, have like a felony record, and it's basically, it's not a death sentence to your job search, but it adds a lot of additional difficulty. But I talk to people who overcome that. And I've interviewed people on the freeCodeCamp podcast who've been able to do that. I mean, if you're a woman, of course, like it's illegal to discriminate against women, but frankly, it shows up in the numbers. Women get paid less, right? Employers are worried that the woman's going to get pregnant and she's going to take a bunch of maternity leave and they're going to be stuck with an empty position for a long time. That's just
that is horrible. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I saw a comment about that. Someone posted it on LinkedIn, and she talked about how the issues that she was having with her company due to maternity leave. Like she came back from maternity leave, and then they just sacked her. I was like, "Are you serious?" Right now? Yeah, it was horrible. And I checked the comment section. A lot of comments about people with their own different experience. It's horrible.
Yeah. So you got those additional layers of difficulty. I think at the end of the day, the best way to overcome these is not by like if you have additional layers of difficulty, which are usually out of your control. Nobody can control which country they were born in, right? If they're on like an H-1B or something like that, and like the situation is very complicated in the United States. I'm not at liberty to talk about politics as the executive director of a tax exempt charity. I can't talk about that, but I can say that if you're trying to come to the U.S. on like a 501 or a H-1B visa, that's tricky. So you need to like figure out ways to really strengthen the signal in those systems to get to the actual hiring manager and be able to convince them like, oh, this person's worth the extra hassle. And you can do that, but it's usually through having outstanding projects or having just like being incredibly personable when you meet these hiring managers at events and just being like very confident and being able to quickly pull out like your laptop and just show them something you built. Or being able to just like, say, hey, Google this or go to this website, like check that out. I built all that, right?
That would be cool. Like I built all that. That was so nice.
Yeah. Just being able to like have people pull up their phone and like search, like find, like get a domain for yourself and have it be something that you can easily say and people can easily type it. Like there are a lot of techniques, but I do think that a lot of it comes. So I like to say there's like 3 legs to the stool. If you want to get a developer job, there's the skills, which is the most important leg, and you can't skip that. You actually have to be able to program. You have to be able to work on a team and build sophisticated systems and maintain those systems. And that's one part, right? Actually being able to do the job, the skills. The second part is your network. And the third part is your reputation. It is very difficult to overcome having a good network with skills. It is very difficult to overcome having a good reputation with skills. But if you have a reputation, if people know who you are, that's like a huge leg up when you meet people in terms of them considering, oh, should we bring this person on?
Yes. And the next question I have is that, like, what importance do you think that, like, platform explorers, we are focused on project experience, CVs, mock interviews, and all of that. So what importance do you think platform explorers and freeCodeCamp is to beginners, anyone just starting out or trying to build their career?
So what would I recommend in terms of, I'm sorry, can you restate the question, Rachel?
Like, why do you think these communities are important? Why do you think freeCodeCamp and platform explorers is important?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could do what I did, and I didn't even fully do this, but like I do talk to people occasionally who do this. You go to the library, you check out the books on programming, you start reading through them, you get your computer out, you start trying to code along at home. You don't know what you're learning. You don't really know why you're learning it, but you're just learning. Like, I'm going to learn programming. My uncle said that I should learn Perl, or I should learn Ruby, or something like that, right? And then you're like going through these O'Reilly books that you can check out from the library, and you're going through them and you're doing them and you're starting to kind of gradually get it. But like a lot of people get frustrated and they just quit from that step. The other step that most people take is they start going on like meetup.com, or they go on like LinkedIn and they start finding events like, hey, this is a programming event. Like it's the Java, the Chicago Java group, right? Or somebody like Linux focus groups and stuff like that. And they start going there and meeting other people. And that's basically what I did. I did the library and I did meeting people at various events. And it probably took me a lot longer to learn programming than it would have if somebody just gave me a literal book that's like how to learn to code and get a developer job, right? That encapsulated all the knowledge. So that was one of the reasons why I wrote that book. But like, I think communities like if people are tuning in to Platform Explorers, for example, that's a big motivational boost. You're going to hear from a lot of people who've kind of gone through the process and who have observations that are helpful. So it's kind of like, animals can't talk to one another for the most part. Like I guess dolphins and whales can, but like they can't really communicate anything to one another. So let's say hypothetically there's flypaper over there, right? And the fly is like, oh, where are all those flies over there? I'm gonna go over there. Oh, I'm stuck. Like, and unfortunately, there's no way to unsticky yourself from that. Like that lesson, like other flies are just gonna keep repeating that same dumb decision because there's no way for them to cry out, don't come near the flypaper, don't come over here, stay away from here. There's no way for them to say that, right? But humans have this amazing ability, this capacity for communicating ideas, and we can do a great job of it. We've got video tools to do that. We've got podcasts where you can have like lengthy discussions. We've got books where you can write like an entire treatise on learning programming or getting a developer job, right? And I think you should leverage that capacity so that you don't have to make all your own mistakes. What I tell people is like, have a degree of faith that the learning resources you're learning are going to work. They're going to teach you what you need to do. That you don't have to second guess every decision about the technology stack that you're learning and stuff like that. That's one of the most common things I see people do is they'll be like, oh, but I saw this job and it's requiring me to know C++, right? Like, shouldn't I be learning C++ in addition to learning what's on freeCodeCamp? And that's a very common thing. And I'll just answer that right now. If you learn Python and JavaScript, you can easily pivot to learning other languages and development frameworks and things like that. So just start with the tools that are best documented. And if you think of freeCodeCamp as documentation in terms of teaching you how to use these tools, like Python and JavaScript are the best documented languages in the world, because we've spent, hundreds of thousands of hours working on resources to make them very well documented so they're easy to learn.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Juan.
Yeah, like this is really, really brilliant. Thank you so much, Quincy, just for the wealth of knowledge shared. I especially loved the example where you give like the fly paper, and the fact that of course animals would be unable to like communicate back to themselves, but then as humans we get to learn from each other's
Yeah,
experiences, right? And that's really the power of community. So
yeah,
thank you so much for sharing that. And actually, even down to it can be really difficult, especially when just starting out your career. And then you feel like, okay, I'm learning one thing, but then I see other people doing something else and it looks like
yeah.
they're more successful. Maybe I should jump over and start to do that. I've actually been in that like on that table before. Like I was learning to be, a deployment specialist and all of that. And I feel like I was doing well for myself, but then I had a new set of individuals who were like doing product management. It looks like they would be getting paid a lot more. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go learn that. I actually completed a course on it, but there was no community. I had no one to turn to, like, okay, what next? Right? How
Yeah.
do I get project experience? How do I, start to apply for jobs and all of that? And then eventually I told myself, okay, you know what? You have something good working for you. Just focus on that. Try to build that out. And well, yeah. So it's now we're here. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess just to wrap things up, what's just one piece of advice, right? Because we love to always give like our listeners just a bit of nuggets of like extra wisdom as we wrap things up. So what would you say is that one piece of advice you'd give to someone who is probably feeling discouraged, in their career journey? They're like, I don't know what I'm doing. So like, what would your advice be to such a person?
Yeah, I mean, there's this saying, quantity has a quality all its own. Like if you have just a huge amount of something, then things can emerge from that. And one of the pieces of advice that I give people is to listen to as many conversations like this one that we're having as possible. Like, yes, a lot of them are redundant. Like you've listened to the nth, podcast about getting a developer job, right? Or you've listened to like I've heard from Quincy before. I heard him on like the change log, or I heard him on some other podcast. Like, do I really need to listen to a second interview with Quincy? Like, don't be shy about just listening to a whole lot of stuff. Like, I can't tell you how many different podcasts I've heard from Scott over at Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
You know who I'm
Scott
talking about?
Hasselman. Yeah.
Yeah, Scott Hanselman. The Hansel minutes, right? And I mean, like I've heard so much of this guy. I've probably heard like 60 or 70 hours of his voice, but I feel like I've learned a great deal over that time. Just hearing him talk a lot, hearing him interview different people, and so it's like you're basically taking these people and you're turning them into your mentors in a way. Like I don't actually have the ability to like hang out with Scott all day and like learn from him, watch him at work and stuff like that. Uh, like some of his colleagues at Microsoft might be able to do. But I've learned a great deal just from listening to his conversations. And so one piece of advice that I have is just listen to a ton of podcasts. I mean, I listen to so many podcasts. It's crazy actually, the quantity. I listen on double speed, and you don't have to listen on double speed, but you could try it. But I listen to, I don't know, like probably like 20 different podcasts a week. And almost all of them are focused on programming and technology. Like I listen to the Vergecast. I listen to Acquired FM, which is an excellent podcast. I also watch a lot of like programming focused videos on YouTube. Of course, freeCodeCamp has a YouTube channel, but also like a lot of like people that focus on like C programming, a lot of game dev programmers. Like I love just learning from just having something on in the background while I'm washing the dishes, while I'm taking my kids to play basketball, like all those kinds of things, just kind of constantly taking. And a lot of people might say, oh, don't you want to like be able to decompress and unplug and do all that stuff? I do that too. Like I went swimming yesterday and I didn't listen to anything while I was swimming. I was just swimming and my thoughts were in my head. But like there is a lot, like there's only so much time in the day and you do want to like jam some of that learning in. And it's no substitute for actually sitting down and programming. You won't get better at programming if you're not actually programming, but it does give you a lot of motivational boost, and it makes you feel like you're connected. Like, I'm no longer living in San Francisco. I no longer walk into a random cafe and have people talking about programming all around me, right? Or having people like actually working on some code base in preparation for going and pitching some investors or something. Like, that's a very common thing. You walk into a cafe in San Francisco, there are like 3 or 4 people sitting around a laptop talking about how they're going to do their pitch in 10 minutes, things like that. That happens all the time. I'm not there anymore. But I feel like just as connected and just wired in by virtue of listening to a lot of podcasts. So that would be my humble suggestion is listen to a lot of podcasts. If you download the FreeCodeCamp app, for example, we've got tons of podcasts that are chosen by us. They're not like infotainment type podcasts, or you're not going to find any like weird conspiracy theory type podcasts in there. It's just podcasts about programming, right? And it's just developers. And on the FreeCodeCamp podcast, like, everybody I talk to is basically a developer, right? And so they're people that know what they're talking about, and they're serious about getting things done, and they're serious about this career.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Quincy. This has been quite brilliant. It's been quite amazing having you as a guest, on this episode of our Spotlight session. I'm actually short of words because this has been super packed. So thank you. Rachel, I don't know if you have anything to say.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we had a lot of comments on the chat. Like, we had one, I don't want to pronounce his name and pronounce it wrongly, but he pointed out the things he has learned from this session. He said, points taken, collaborate and build one or more projects to showcase all your skills. Be intentional when applying for jobs. Identify the key stakeholders for a job and engage directly. Tailor the resume to fit what they are looking for before sending them to connections. Listen more, get yourself out of your comfort zone, and build a relationship with people outside of your friend zone. Do not be shy, become extroverted. I like this. Thank you. Yeah. And we also had a question about the name of your book. I dropped it on the chat, which is Learn to Code. And I also dropped a link to the book.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to thank you for continuing to have these spotlight sessions. They're awesome. Thanks. It's an honor to be on here. And like, this is precisely, like, anybody listening to this is precisely the kind of thing you should check out regularly and go work through the backlog. This will give you motivation. This will give you a lot of knowledge, and it will keep you moving forward toward your goals.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. All right then. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. To join us for our lookout for when we have our next guest for next month's spotlight session. And then keep doing amazing things and all the best with your careers.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow us, follow Platform Explorers. So thank you.